13. It is time. The fight is going to start with swords on their side to try to prevent too much noise from arousing suspicion. When things got noisy, the loud noise would reverberate in the small area, so they'd keep it light if they could. The area is small as well, so it would be easier with claws and swords. The truck is a secret weapon that had to come silently with them till the fight started. They had to control the exits. The good guy crew gets to the hotel, and they get suited up and collect all that they need. Zook wasn't great with a sword or gun, but he brought both just in case, a shotgun and one of those curvy swords. He thinks they were a scimitar, but he didn't know the difference. He knew the slicing or pointy end goes into the other person and would work with that. He really should be getting some practice with these things. Guns were easier, but in the zombie apocalypse, when it does happen, swords will be the way to go. He could be like Xena warrior princess. Oh no, that can be Zant. He could be some other more manly warrior with some practice. He straps on the shotgun, and scimitar on a belt, and without words, the crew starts jogging towards the bunker. He looks at the rest of them, and they are holding their weapons, and in a few seconds, he finds out why. Both weapons are slapping against his legs and it actually is starting to hurt, so he unsheathes them, and runs with them awkwardly. In a large clearing, they see someone waving them over, and running towards them. It is Becca, one of the muscle members of the crew that has been watching the place with some that were decent at hiding others. Zant loudly whispers.
You all know your duties, good hunting, and don't forget to signal the situation at each exit if someone is trying to run. Becca, you will be going to the south entrance. It looked like an obvious exit for the largest of the bunker rooms. The signals have been messaged, so get to it.
They all nod, and dart in different directions. Becca gets to the south entrance, and with some help from a ghoul, braces it closed with a crowbar. Another group at the north entrance does the same, forcing a crowbar to force the spinning wheel closed. Some edges along the side could be used to brace the metal and keep it from moving. The main entrance is silently invaded, the door quietly opens, and the crew looks around. It is dark, but most of them could see, acclimating to the dark, every night. 4 ghouls are set to stay on the outside, to set their trap into place. After opening the entrance, the enemy would be in for a rude surprise. They were thrilled, because since that is the case, they would not have to be in the thick of things. The first area they enter, to the good guy crew, looks like storage space, 1 old-fashioned army troop transport and 1 more recent truck for hauling regular things were parked there, with enough room for the crew to fit without turning sideways. There were wooden crates around the area. They were opened with boards between them allowing anyone to see inside the boxes, but a couple of them stacked on top of a bottom one. All were empty. The crew passed these up to continue into the place, a short hall with left and right doors, and a stairway leading down. Paul led at the front, Zant is near the back with Zook and a few others who were not the most battle-hardened, or perhaps more important, such as the magicians who fit that category. Petey does what he can to hide them using the blood power for which he has practiced over the decades, but he keeps on trying to whisper every small thing that happens to them, what happened last night, and they had to keep putting their hands over his mouth. Paul opens the 2 doors to the left and right and 2 of them glide into each room. The crew hears some action in one of the rooms, some furniture being broken, a few cuts, and a short scream that is not very loud, but none at the other. As the crew passes, and each room is checked, the group continued down to the stairway and started down. After most have made it down to the next flight, Zant and Zook were still near the top with one of the magicians, and they heard the entrance door, the one they all ran through, screech open, and a few rounds of gunfire forced into the door. It seemed like they got one trying to leave. Zant got a text message of one trying to leave, confirmed down. Zant waves the crew forward to continue. Once they all get to the bottom of the first flight, they split off into 2 groups because of 2 paths that are in front of them, walkways where they need to split, which they do as though they had practiced and started going room to room checking on areas. Paul's team reaches a room. Paul and a couple of others make short work of 3 ghouls resting in a reading area, couches, and books, but they have weaponry ready with them like usual. Guns would be loud as known through this place, so swords were still able to be used and stealth is still a factor that helped the crew. They knew of 4 underground floors of this complex, so they continued, room by room, and eventually floor by floor. Once the good guy crew got to the 2nd level of the basement area, there is more activity, and sadly one of the Fang members is able to get a few shotgun rounds off and the secretive strike seemed to initially be blown, but the concrete and natural walls of the area were so thick that it did not seem like the sound reverberated as much as they expected, but if a few were paying attention, they might be in for a bit more than expected, with the Fang members already larger than expected. There were not as many as there were back at the storage complex, but there was still enough to give them a workout. The 3rd basement floor is a set of what seemed like barracks. Humans and ghouls were milling around the place seemingly without excitement until there were a few blurs of activity. Due to the area, the group needed to split up quite a bit to clear the floor. Zook entered one of the rooms with PT and one of the ghouls. Instead of a barracks, it seemed more like a brig. Surprisingly, he sees Alisan in one of the cells, and on a shelf, he sees Fluffers in her little cat crate. On top of the crate, he is able to see a necklace. It has the large letters, J and S on it. He goes over to the shelf first and pets the cat crate a bit saying he would get to her in a second, and finds a set of keys and hands them over to PT. He says,
"Get her out of that place first."
And PT goes over to the cell to open the door. He gets an odd suspicion of her though. She seemed fairly calm as she sat up on the bed and calmly said,
"It is about time you came to get me. You are not one of those things trying to trick me, are you?"
PT looks at her with intent, trying to find out if she is trying to trick him too, and from what he could tell, she is the real deal. Her clothes were a little old, and nothing else strange is going on, so he tried a couple of the different keys and one of them worked, so he let her out. PT apologized.
"I'm sorry this happened to you, nice lady. I did what I could."
Alisan nodded, and walked over to Zook, and smiled. She is acting sort of strange, just having been rescued from whatever fate had claimed of her. The ghoul walked up to them, and said that they needed to continue, which is just what Alisan seemed to be waiting for. A jab at PT's face knocked him on his ass with a cracked nose, and another very fast one dropped the ghoul in a heap as the illusion dropped from Alisan. Without really taking a look, the shotgun came up to meet her stomach. Moving quickly, a hand pushes the shotgun to the side that Zook is brandishing and he looks into the eyes of Seth, who holds the gun to the side without effort. At the same time, Seth reaches for Zook's throat, grabs it, and lifts his head back.
"Well,"
Seth said, holding the gun to the side with ease, lifting Zook with his other hand.
"Aren't you in a pickle, Zook?"
Zook's body shivers at the sound of the man's voice, deep and hearty. He knew this voice and has for over a decade, but Seth has not been seen since the fight with the Fang. Zook tries to manipulate the strong vampire in front of him with his practiced mind manipulation over decades.
"You will let me go."
And with a spurt of laughter, Seth lifts Zook higher from the ground, his jacket scratching against the concrete.
"So?"
Zook asks back, without being able to say it loudly without much more air.
"You are one of the Fang?"
While pushing the shotgun to the side, Seth effortlessly lifts the gun away from his body, showing that his strength is beyond Zook's, but he is still able to talk.
"Oh, no, the farm are a bunch of children playing at a game they know nothing about. They think they know of power, but know little about the goings-on in our little corner of the world. I have just bunked up with them for a while until I can get my plans into fruition, but it looks like you found them, and in the same fashion, found me."
"And the cat? Why isn't she dead?"
Seth answers with a grin.
Oh, Zook, I'm not a monster, she is just a bystander. I am more of a dog person, but I don't just slaughter cats, it would be inhumane.
Zook has one more to ask.
What about Jessica?
Seth sighs, and speaks while keeping Zook off the ground.
I should have known you all would find out about her. It is truly a misfortune that I had to let her go. She was going to get me into trouble, that one.
Seth did seem upset at having to discuss this woman who he had killed a short time ago.
She was getting bored, and had to talk to someone about the only interesting thing she had going for herself, and I found out she had been saying too much. Kids these days, right?
Zook calls out for help, with the tiniest squeak, not having much air left in his body, but he also pulls the trigger of the shotgun, not hitting anyone but making plenty of noise. Seth whips him across the room, with a flick of his wrist against the door, forcing it closed sharply, drawing attention to those outside of it. The door is forced open, and Zook is pushed against the wall a bit. He is still able to move around after a mean hit to the shoulder from the throw. Paul and Zant rush in. Zook looks for a couple of seconds and no longer sees Seth in the room where he is standing close to the table. Zook lets them know.
Seth is in here, and he is hiding.
They both look through the room and see Petey, who is getting up after a mean cracked nose, which he is using blood to heal, and the ghoul is wobbling to his feet as well.
I don't see him. Do you?
Paul asks Zant. She answers.
No, damn it, how is he this good?
Zook lets them know.
He claims not to be Fang, but we aren't done here, we have to finish up.
Paul and Zant nod, and continue. Zook walks over to Fluffers and uses his ability to speak with animals.
Did you know that the person there is a man, not a woman?
The cat answers.
Hey, non-human, I'm glad you are okay. Of course, I did, it is the man that was with my human all those other times. He couldn't talk to me like you though, but he did take me a while ago from your place. He is really strong.
Zook answers back.
I know, I'm glad you are okay also. I'll get you home when we get a chance.
Zook cuts the communication, and carries the cat carrier out of there, with the two who were able to take a good punch, and were able to still move and get up out of there as well. He catches a yowl from the cat carrier, and balances it out better. He wasn't really paying attention to it. He hands it off to one of the other ghouls in the area.
Watch her, keep the carrier steady.
The newly designated cat handler takes the carrier gently. This floor is finally clear, so they continue down one more floor to what they think is last. There were 4 more doors, 2 on each side of the hall. The first door on the left they knew led up and out of the fire escape, the others they were not sure about. The crew is a few less than when they came in, but most of them were still available, so they first opened the side doors to check them out. One of them has a strange supply room of jars of miscellaneous parts, hearts, animal parts unknown to most of them, and jars of what looked like blood around the room. The next is with a thick door that is padlocked closed. They are able to easily remove the locks and open the door to what seemed like another brig, cells lining a wall of people. A dozen cells, each with someone in it, and its bathroom, and the doors were not jail cells, more like solid doors of solitary confinement. There are vents out of each of them to prevent a smell. They would come back to them soon. The next door is to a miscellaneous closet. The last is a much larger room, they can tell. The crew opens the door, and sees what amounted to a torture chamber, with a cot. There were tables around with straps to keep someone forced down, or standing ones. Small standing cages, and tools all over. Most of it had not been cleaned in some time, they could tell. On one of the tables is a woman, who the crew thought might be Alisanne, and the creature standing over her is ready for them, formed in all of its muscular gravel-skinned glory. The creature's maw cracked into a grotesque smile, it says in a deep voice.
You think you can take me on, this time? I would not be bested by a werewolf, and none of you could do the same. It also seems like you don't have them tonight. It is a shame most of you will have to die.